My name is Anna Cabrera. My mother is Ida Cabrera, so I am a West baby. I am the Chief Communications Officer at Menzies Automotive Group. I have also been a lecturer at St. Clair College for well over a decade. I am a newspaper special features veteran of over 20 years, and I am a published author. But what I really am is a storyteller. And today, I'd like to share some stories with you, including this little tale that you just might connect to. So if you would please stay with me. I was 9 years old. I didn't know what the word metropolis meant, but I figured that's what this airport was. It was as big a space as I'd ever seen, and it vibrated with the energy of thousands of travelers, including our small family of 4. Growing up in Manila, which had a population of nearly 8 million in the 80s, I shouldn't have been intimidated by the noise and the crowds, but this was different. This was new, and this was scary. But as I've learned, fear is often interchangeable with excitement. After a long flight from Manila, our layover was in San Francisco. All around me, people departed and arrived, their faces, a mosaic of feelings. I wondered then if they felt like me, joyful, excited, impatient. I wondered how many of them were the opposite, stressed, fatigued, sad. I wonder now how many didn't know how to feel. Dad went alone to wait at the baggage carousel, clad in his best brown suit. He looked so debonair, so dashing. He looked so important, so brave, and so powerful. But there he stood, a figure I scarcely recognized, dwarfed between 2 giant American men. You see my dad, he's not that giant. In my 9-year-old eyes, these men were giants. Their broad shoulders and towering statures casting long shadows that threatened to swallow my father whole. He, who had always been a Goliath to me, suddenly appeared so small and so vulnerable between these enormous, intimidating men amidst the chaos of the busy terminal. The contrast was jarring, one that challenged my understanding of size and strength and of my father. Standing at just 5 feet 6 inches tall, Dad has never been, nor will ever be, the biggest and the strongest man in the world, not even close. But no one, not then and not now, will ever tell me that he's not the bravest and the most valorous man who ever lived. No, Dad has never been a soldier, or a police officer, or a Coast Guard captain. He hasn't fought off beasts in the African savannah, crushed snakes beneath his feet, or braved the Brazilian wilderness. What he was doing then, and what he does to this day, is dare to dream, and to run toward it without hesitation or procrastination or excuse. And that can be the most terrifying thing of all. But my father, strong and brave and kind and wonderful and all the great things a daughter could ever call her daddy, he dreamed of a better life for his family and moved us across the world armed with little more than a few bags and a heart full of hope. His strength wasn't in muscle or brawn, but in his unfaltering determination and unmatched ability to face the unknown with a steady gaze and a prayerful, grateful spirit. Uncertainty, as all of you know, demands a strength of spirit, as a resilience that whips past physical prowess. I still often think of my dad standing proudly with his hands clasped behind his back at the baggage claim, waiting for our few things, 8 pieces of luggage for a family of 4, filled with only clothes, shoes, and books we could afford to bring, while staring firmly and confidently in the face of the great unknown. There he stood tall, a giant among men, guiding his little family with a steady hand and a steadfast belief in the promise of a brighter future, no matter how the limits of his courage and faith might be tested. I don't remember much more about that layover, but what I do remember, I love my father in his best brown suit, surrounded by the biggest men I had ever seen. He was then and is now my true giant, my security and safety in a world that feels so uncertain. Dad taught me that true strength isn't always visible, that it lives inside the heart, and that sometimes the smallest among us are the ones who stand the tallest. That is the first public reading of an excerpt of our family's memoir, one that I've been working on for 2 years. Ladies, I am averaging 1 chapter a year. It has not come as a surprise to anyone in my family that I would grow up to be a writer, because I grew up surrounded by books. Some of my earliest memories are not of events or places, but of choosing something to read. In the Philippines, when I had to go to the doctor, my reward was that I was allowed to pick a book. A book wasn't something to pass the time, it was the key to another world and the permission to become something I couldn't be in this world. When we moved here and had limited resources, my family spent a great deal of time at Windsor Public Library. I remember the quiet and the smell and the sense that something important was waiting to happen. I didn't know then that many years later, a library would become the setting for my first children's book. But I know now that that connection began in those rooms, and those aisles, and those shelves, and those pages. I read constantly. And what I read were stories like The Little Princess and The Secret Garden and Heidi and The Little Prince and many, many fairy tales. These were stories of children who were displaced or misunderstood or extraordinary. They endured hardship and were eventually seen. And at the same time, I was deeply influenced by musical theater. I loved Les Miserables, and Phantom of the Opera, and Miss Saigon, and I dreamed of playing characters whose love was profound and whose endings were tragic. Admittedly, this is a lot for a small child to absorb. The emotional tone of my imagination was extremely dramatic. Everything in those stories felt heightened. People loved completely. People suffered completely. And alongside this, my parents taught my brother and me something that never felt outlandish or unrealistic, which was that anything was possible. That we could have, be, or do anything. That wishes not only mattered, but they were necessary. So without realizing it, I held 2 ideas together. That life could be intense and bewildering, and that dreams could be realized. When I began to write, I wrote the kinds of stories I read. But more than that, I began to expect life to feel like them, which is a slightly dangerous expectation for any human being, but especially for a child. I didn't think of a future with taxes or grocery budgets or laundry. I thought of swashbuckling knights in shining armor, happily ever afters. When we moved from the Philippines to Canada, I romanticized that too. I didn't experience the move as a loss or as a rupture the way an adult might. This was thanks to my parents, who were very careful about what we saw and what we didn't see. They never narrated difficulty to us, they narrated possibility. So my memory of arriving in this country was not one of grief, it was wonder. I remember the first time we bought 2 boxes of cereal at once, which felt wildly extravagant, and it was as though we had entered a new economic category overnight. I remember seeing snow for the first time and feeling like something magical had happened to the world. So the story, I told myself, was good. We hadn't lost anything. We had gained everything, and this matters so much, because children build identity through the stories available to them. And our immigration story was not one of scarcity, it was one of expansion. There was another story present in our household as well. West was always spoken about in our home with a kind of reverence. I didn't know the structure of the program or its curriculum, but I knew its importance because my mother spoke of it with gratitude. Like many of you, she had been highly educated in her homeland. She led people, held responsibility, and yet she credited West with the flourishing of her career in ways that she never minimized. Even decades later, after she retired from a long career with the City of Windsor, after receiving the Heart of Parks and Recreation Award, she still speaks about West with the same gratitude. She never describes West as a temporary step. For her, this organization's program was foundational. West meant doors opening again. West meant moving forward. West meant becoming possible in a new place. And if I could pay homage to my musical theater history, West even shows up in one of my favorite musical theater songs. Is it Little Wicked? Yes. So if you care to find me, look to the western sky. As someone told me lately, everyone deserves the chance to fly. Through childhood and adolescence, I continued to dream and I continued to write. I wrote stories, fan fiction, scripts, anything that allowed narrative space. I participated in theater. I lived inside imagined worlds with great seriousness. But I didn't imagine writing or storytelling to be something I'd do for a living one day. It was just what I did, the way other children might run, or build, or draw. It didn't occur to me that I might become a writer in the formal sense, and that exactly as my parents promised, I was living my dream come true. That might be because I had another story inside me as well, which will be familiar to some of you. We tend to underestimate ourselves, and we listen to that unreliable narrator. When I look back, I don't actually see proof or pattern of any others diminishing me or dismissing me so much as I had my own doubt holding me back. I questioned my readiness and my legitimacy. I questioned whether I belonged in certain rooms or I deserved certain pathways. That became part of my internal narrative, that I was not enough. This is not an uncommon story, particularly for women and particularly for immigrant women, navigating those structures. But at the time, I didn't see it as a disillusion. I thought, well, if I'm thinking it, it must be true. I think I was really surprised at how proud of myself I was the first time I saw my name in print. In 2007, I got my first byline. 19 years it took for that dream to come true. Once upon a time, I had been that 9-year-old immigrant who wanted only one thing: to win a Windsor Star Christmas writing contest just so I could see my name in the newspaper. That was the entire dream. Not fame, not career, just so I could see my name in ink. So when that byline appeared, I knew that Mom and Dad were right. Dreams, no matter how simple, do come true. And from that first byline onward, the dream kept going and it kept getting better. Thousands of articles later, published throughout Canada, the United States, and Europe, some with my name published, some without. My imposter syndrome was alive and well. But I was confident about two things. One, that I could write a story. And two, darn it, I could manifest and make things happen. There's a line from a Disney melody I've loved since childhood. A dream is a wish your heart makes. It's so sentimental, but more than that, it is profound in its accuracy about desire. A lot of the time, wishes exist before confidence. They show up whether or not we can trust that we can fulfill them. But dreams are possibility. Some dreams feel unattainable, some are terrifying, some are exciting. Sometimes you wake up from dreams in tears. Sometimes inspiration comes from dreams, but ultimately I like to think that dreams equal direction. For many people, the path between the dream and the dream coming true isn't direct. It curves and pauses and detours. You'll make mistakes and you will fail. You'll be confused and you'll be afraid. But it's how life unfolds, isn't it? Stories, at least the good ones, aren't one hue or tone or experience. To feel joy, you must have felt sorrow. To feel pain, you must have known love. I am not special because I've recognized I'm a storyteller by profession and by nature. Most of us discover that we are not only writers of our lives, but editors as well. When something doesn't fit, we adjust. When a direction proves wrong, we redirect. When a chapter closes unexpectedly, we begin another. This is not effortless and it can be hard, but it does reflect something fundamental, that the story we find ourselves living is not final. Revision exists, and a new story is always possible. When I first started teaching at St. Clair College, I hadn't imagined myself as a teacher. But in the classroom, something wonderful happened. Story, which had always been natural to me, became a way of helping others make sense of their own experiences. Students responded not to expertise, but to recognition. They saw themselves in examples. They stayed engaged. They showed up to class. They laughed. They cried. I saw through them that storytelling mattered not only to me, but to every single one of us, because we all need to be seen and heard. People find themselves through narrative. They interpret their past and imagine their future through it. Every one of us revises. We change direction and we step away from systems that don't fit and move towards ones that do. Some revisions are dramatic, others are almost invisible. But not a single one of us lives only the first version of our lives. We are all, in some measure, editors as well as authors. I often think about the women like you, like my mother, and programs like West. When I meet you or speak with you or hear your stories, I see my mother in you. I see her determination. I see the rebuilding. I feel your willingness to learn again. I am awed by the courage of entering systems that don't yet fully recognize you. And I also see something else. I see your daughters, present or future, watching, absorbing, interpreting, forming their own sense of responsibility. I've so far only written one children's book, so I'm not an expert, but I know that children read books the way they read lives. They infer what is allowed, they infer what is reachable, most of all, they infer what they can become. And this afternoon, standing here, I am aware that I am visible in someone else's forming narrative the same way my mother was visible in mine. I am proof of an outcome. I represent possibility. And my standing here is evidence that paths can extend further than the beginning ever suggested. When I look at you today, what I see clearly is transformation. Please take heart in my mother's story and how it shaped mine. I was a child reading in libraries. The immigrant seeing snow as magic. The daughter who watched her mother rebuild. The young author seeking a byline. The teacher reaching students through story. The author seeing her book printed for the first time. I am, just as you are, one unfolding story, gradually written and rewritten with sweat, tears, experience, and love. And that is what I want to leave you with today. I'm not here to give instruction or advice, but recognition. The story you began with is not the only one you will live. Changing your mind, or sharpening your pencil, or pressing delete on your device doesn't diminish your value and your becoming. Retraining does not dilute your importance, and starting again doesn't reduce it. Sometimes, the most beautiful and expansive chapters emerge precisely because you chose revision. I am so blessed to become someone whose deepest love is her work, whose childhood wish became real, and whose path exists because of a mother who chose to rebuild in a new country with the help of a program she has never stopped offering. Always remember, you are author, editor, and heroine. Thank you.
Thank you, Ava. I would like to bring